All right, that didn't work exactly as expected. I thought the video would keep playing. I didn't realize it was short. Anyway, welcome.
We literally just talked about you doing it as well.
I know, and I still messed it up because I clicked on Paladin on that beautiful lava there instead of the 30-second countdown. So welcome everybody. Hopefully everyone is with us now. Welcome back to the Game Dev Show. I'm here with David, Greg, and Andrew, and we're going to be talking about a couple of things. I'll talk a little bit about the new Oculus announcements that have been going on. They had their big event and announced a couple of things. One that I don't think, Dave, you're not wearing the new glasses, are you?
No.
We'll talk about those. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the Epic layoff stuff. And I also wanted to talk about the big changes that I planned on making. And I made a little video announcement just a little while ago, and I think quite a few people have seen it. If you haven't seen it, we'll dive into the details of that in just a minute. So anyways, welcome guys. How's it going?
Doing good.
It's all right, isn't it?
Me and Dave have been having a long discussion for the last hour or so on a lot of these things, so it should be interesting. So first off, I guess a couple things. Let's see. Let's pop up chat here. I'll just cover the announcement video really quick. I made about half an hour ago, released a video talking about some changes that I'm going to make to the channel going forward. Largely going to be focused back to 100% on education, and I really want to get away from the entertainment stuff. I feel like I kind of found myself falling into the trap of doing entertainment content and sponsored stuff around that, trying to drive up views and engagement and all that stuff, and doing a lot of things that just really aren't what I actually enjoy doing, which was the teaching stuff. I want to just go 100% back to teaching, working a lot more with students going forward, and just focusing on educational content that's maybe a little bit less exciting, but hopefully more useful and more fun for me to make, because I don't have fun making entertainment stuff. I don't have fun making sponsor stuff. I do have fun talking to students about how they got a new job or they learned something new, or seeing comments like, oh, hey, this saved my project. Now I can do it. So I'm going to be back onto that. Oh, and speaking of for students, if you're already registered, there's a link now in the resources page to a weekly Zoom meeting that we're going to do about an hour before the Game Dev Show. So I'm still going to do the Game Dev Show every Friday and 7:45 a.m. Pacific. So it's about an hour and 15 minutes before. We're going to do live student calls offline just on Zoom, where we'll, for the time being, until we get into multiplayer content, dive into your projects and your specific problems. So we'll just go through specific things. If anybody has a specific one that they want to talk about in the next one in advance, feel free to email that to me and send it. I'll send out an email about this too, but send it to me and we'll go over your projects and talk through those specific problems. So that's my plan going forward. No more sponsorship stuff. Just except for I have an Odin one that's coming up that's already done. And by the way, I still love the sponsors. Like, Odin is still my favorite. Out of all the Unity tools, it's still my favorite, and I still highly recommend it. But it's too much of a distraction. Is it too late to become a student? No, you can sign up for the beginner course right now. The multiplayer stuff will be sometime in the near future once I get it figured out. By the way, there's a form in the description if you're interested in multiplayer stuff, to just give an idea of exactly where you are and what kind of stuff you want. You want like shooting enemies, picking up and trading items type stuff. Are you more at the beginner level or more advanced? So if you're into that stuff and interested, it'll help make sure that content is perfect. Anyway, thanks again. Looks like I think everybody in chat was pretty supportive of the change, and everybody in the comments seems to be on board as well. So yeah, thanks. Anyway, Greg, how's it going?
Great, but I don't know why you think educational content would be less exciting. I mean,
it's not that it's yeah, I don't know. I feel like I fell into this trap of like YouTube analytics, and what I noticed like last week was that all the videos that pop up for me on YouTube now are like how to optimize your click-through rate, how to optimize the first 30 seconds, and I'm like, I find it to be the most boring and tedious stuff in the world. I have zero interest in like being an entertainer. Like I like teaching stuff, but I don't really like entertaining. So yeah.
Well, I think just the fact that I'm such a nerd or a geek, I mean, that's the kind of stuff I find appealing. Tutorials, courses. So yeah, I'm really turned off by the more marketing oriented stuff.
Yeah, I think everybody agrees, and I do too. I just didn't realize I was falling into this YouTube trap. Like I've realized it, and yeah, time to quit that and dive into the other stuff. You want clicks, drama channels? Yeah, like that's the thing. Like I could get to 1 million subscribers doing a bunch of drama videos and other stuff, probably, and lots of editing. But I just really find it so boring. Like it bores the living hell out of me, and it just stresses me out. Like I don't like looking at that stuff. So anyway, unlike Andrew, whose whole channel is all about drama.
So the latest thing is I make the audio just peak constantly, and I'm screaming the entire time. The kids are totally into that these days. It's very annoying, but you gotta do what you gotta do for those sweet, sweet clicks.
You gotta scream, Andrew.
Yeah. My friends' kids watch YouTube, and I don't understand the youth.
Yeah.
Let's just put it out there.
Welcome to the Grumpy Old Man channel.
Yeah, my birthday's tomorrow, so I'm ahead of the curve, I think.
I don't get all the TikToks. What the TikToks about there? Which is probably
TikTok is there to spy on you. Why you can't install it on your phone.
I watch
TikTok
YouTube shorts. I like them because they're short. I can like eat a sandwich while just going through and click, right? And you can see it's addictive. You start doing it, it's like, oh yeah, I get this. But the problem is I've got lots of science, I've got lots of history, lots of game dev stuff, some interesting stuff. After about 5 minutes, 6 minutes, I start getting all the random crap because they run out of the stuff I'm interested in. Mm-hmm. So they start showing me the popular stuff, which is all the worst of the internet. And that's where I'm like, okay, this is just don't recommend this channel. Don't recommend all of these channels. Don't recommend, because all they're trying to do is get people pissed at each other for silly reasons.
I love it when you can fall down a rabbit hole, though, where you start watching something like a woodworking video and you're like, yeah, I could do woodworking. And the next thing you come out and there's like 5 more and you're like, oh yeah, I really enjoyed that last woodworking video. And then what happens? You build an entire woodworking shop in your garage and you start making garage doors and gates and furniture and all the rest, which is a new channel that I'll be starting very soon, since I did fall down that. And I literally do build furniture now in my spare time.
There you go. And yes,
Dave has a real shop. He's a real builder.
Yeah.
So is it like a really modern shop, like the New Yankee Workshop, with really advanced dust collection and laser guidelines on your saw and everything?
Yeah, some of it. I mean, yeah, I have a big woodworking bench that I built that has my table saws and my miter saws and my router table that I built and all the rest of it. And then just over there is just over to the side is a paint booth, a spray paint booth where I spray all the 3D prints. I have a massive 3D print cabinet that sits 2 3D printers, that one of my push 'em up 3, and then my big 1/2 meter by 1/2 meter by 1/2 meter 3D printer, and then you move over and there's another station which is an electronic station where I do all my soldering, has all my everything. I'm not going to get into it because it'll bore people out there, but yes, I have a full shop that in my garage which now can't house any cars.
Yeah, Dave's got some really cool shit out there. Do you still have that display thing that you printed on those printers? Remember that whole big giant pixel display that you built in there?
Which I built, spent ages on, got it all refined, and built an app that you can communicate with it. And that thing that I never turn on. Yeah.
Yes. It built the code, built all the videos for it. Yeah. And then,
and that again was a rabbit hole. I saw somebody building a pixel display and I went, that looks fun. I love retro stuff. I love retro sprites and all the rest of it. And I was helping a friend with his platformer at the time, and I was like, I should just build one. And then I built one, and I was like, why did I build this?
Yep.
Why did I make it? Because it's all 3D printed, all the cases outside, the tracks and all the rest. And then I put all the LED strips in, then showed people how to do the code and send it from Unity and run it all on there. And now it just sits there and I never turn it on. In fact, I don't even think it's plugged in because I unplugged it because I was plugging in a new simulator that I was messing with after watching an old film. I was like, I want to build a simulator that does that. So I 3D printed a load of parts for a simulator and then started making that and then never finished it.
Yeah, it sounds about right. I've got boxes of LED stuff from the display. I think I showed you a little bit last year, the stuff I was trying to build, and then I set it up, and then I got distracted and realized that I don't have the time or energy to do that either. Way too many distractions. I'm glad to be kind of cutting a lot of these out. Matthew said that he'd love to see your shop. Been working on woodworking for the last 25 years. You should do maybe a quick YouTube short of it or something. Like spend 30 seconds recording a video. Like here's my shop.
Do an entertainment video where I show people around my workspace. Yeah, no,
not an entertainment one. Just I'm thinking like a 30 seconds, no editing. That's one thing I've decided. I'm not doing a bunch of editing anymore. Done with it.
I tried doing shorts at one point and realized it wasn't really me. And then and the shorts were like, this is the 3D printer cabinet. I'll show you how to build this soon. And then realized people really didn't watch the channel for stuff I was actually building. They wanted to watch the tutorials and some of the game dev log stuff. But every time I put up something about this is a 3D printer that I'm using this for and I've done it, just didn't get the click-through rate. And then somebody said, you should start a second channel that has that. And I was like, my first channel doesn't even have anybody watching it. Why am I going to build a second channel that doesn't have anybody watching it? Like, this stuff takes time.
Andrew's got the solution for you right there in the private chat. You've just got to do your woodworking with no shirt on.
Yeah.
Day in the life of GameDev.
Yeah.
I'm there sawing away. You just rework all the things from video games, be like a Warcraft 3 worker. Chopping a tree with no shirt.
I'm not Code Monkey. I'm not going to take my shirt off on video. Sorry, guys.
He said in that video that he watches the Game Dev show every Friday.
Code Monkey's super cool. If I was still ripped like he is, I would do the stream with my shirt off. Not since my 20s.
That guy, he's going to launch his OnlyFans. I was literally going to say he launched his OnlyFans. Somebody put it in the comments. He's going to launch his OnlyFans and get tons of people. And that was the start of it.
Coding from down under.
That's got some dedication there. That has. No, not for me.
All right, everybody in chat, if you want to see Code Monkey's OnlyFans, let us know.
We should start a petition.
Put it right there in chat. Maybe it'll be enough, and he'll change his mind and just go for it.
You're all already sliding back into the entertainment aspect.
No, we're just letting Code Monkey do that part. He can do that.
Yeah. That's for him.
Yeah. Oh man.
I just think it's cool that he adopts dogs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and he visits a dog shelter regularly. That's pretty cool.
Oh, nice. I haven't seen that. I missed that. Check that out. I haven't actually watched the whole day in the life video either, though. To watch that. Yeah, dogs are cool. We're up to 3 again now. It's weird. They take up most of the bed.
What, on top of all the kids, you've now got 3 dogs as well?
Yes. We got a couple new dogs recently, and 6 kids, 3 dogs.
Well, it gives the kids something to do.
What's that?
It gives the kids something to do.
Yeah. The kids like to play with the dogs, and the dogs keep them protected and keep them used to dogs. I just have to keep the dogs protected from the baby is the main thing. So she doesn't try to ride them because they are big enough for her to ride. So do you guys want to dive into some of these other topics that we've got for the day? Either the Oculus stuff, Epic stuff, or whatever
Depressing or non-depressing? Everybody choose which one.
Why don't I start with the depressing part, the Epic layoffs? I assume everybody saw that.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it, it looks like they laid off, what was it, 16% of the staff right now?
Something like that.
Over 800 people.
And my understanding was that I don't know for sure, but a good chunk of them were in like external studios and things that they had acquired somewhat recently.
Yeah, and they had divested a few. So the 800 was layoffs, and then there was bunch more untold number. I don't know how many that were divested. So they still have their jobs, but they're now technically either under another company or under their own company.
Yeah, like
so,
Bandcamp.
Bandcamp,
And,
yeah.
and was it super something? I forget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame. I think that the timing is perfect, is right after the Unity mess,
Yeah,
but
I
it's
wonder if
still
that was a
fucking terrible for the
coincidence, or if
devs.
they
Like,
said, "Hey, we should take advantage of this distraction."
No, these things are planned way in advance because they look at budgets and all the rest of it. And it's not uncommon at the moment. There's an awful lot of game studios that are closing at the moment. People are starting to realize that the budgets are just not working for them at the moment because the budgets for games are just going up and up. I remember back in 2008, we were working on a game and it was considered a lot of money because we were spending 32 million on it. And
yeah, that was a high budget. I mean, a normal budget was like 5 to 10 was like, you're probably going to be able to build this full game and release it with a $5 to $10 million budget.
Yeah, and we had a $32 million budget, and it was considered the biggest game in the studio and one of the biggest games coming out at the time. And now that's small in comparison to Starfield or something like that, which is another thing. And another thing I have noticed since I started looking at jobs and stuff like that, because I was wondering whether I was going to go back into the job market or continue being a contractor and building my own stuff. And I noticed a lot of companies now saying quad A's. So there are triple A's and now there are quad A's. This is a new term that seems to be proliferating out into the world. And this is the high, I believe, and people correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe a lot of this is looking at these live games that are huge, like that are completely open world, that have just ginormous budgets to spend on things. But quad A is a thing we're going to start seeing a lot more of because they're trying to distinct themselves from triple A's. And the only real difference I've seen so far is the fact that their budget is just
it's got an extra comma.
Enormous. Yeah, it is a ridiculous budget that they're spending to bring these things out. And the other problem with these is the amount of money going into these games. If that game fails, you could be a big studio. If that one game fails, suddenly your studio is in trouble because you've invested a lot of money and you can't walk it back.
Well, I suppose these games are also expecting to constantly be bringing in more money and, releasing new stuff. And I don't know how accurate because I don't follow this stuff, but I saw a video yesterday about Diablo 4 basically tanking these days. Like it was a huge release, but now nobody seems to play it. Nobody's watching it.
In a long time.
Yeah. But I guess Blizzard is banking on Diablo 4 being a long-term hit that's going to bring in cash over a long period of time. And so they're maybe not doing that.
Yeah, that'd be I don't know. I mean, it's very possible they were banking on that, but it seems like a bad bet to make. It's not World of Warcraft and like where you've got this sustained player base that's constantly wanting to come back and play. If like games like Diablo and all that, they're destined to die off. Like they're going to have that spike launch and then dip. They're not, EVE Online where they're going to get a slow growth upwards or something. They're going to be the exact opposite.
And you've got the sort of some of the opposite play in something like Modern Warfare and Call of Duty, where they're still releasing every single year. And then they're just keeping it live for that year and putting it out the next time, not keeping a game constantly going. Like
all the sports games.
Like yeah. And then you've got games like Star Citizen, which will come out eventually, which I think you could probably consider quad A with the ridiculous budget that's gone into that.
Have you played that lately? Every time I've tried to get in there and play it, I just end up running around lost and getting irritated. And then I'm like, I quit. Like, I don't want to run around. Like it's been a while, to be fair. Like it may have changed, but
it's to be honest, Star Citizen for me has always been interesting. I'm up for playing it and all the rest, but I've been holding off because I've got friends that work there and a few other things, and I've been like, it's not quite ready for me to jump in and do it. I don't want to be burnt out by something being glitchy or something like that. But from what I hear, it's a lot less that way now, and it's much more stable. But for me, looking at Star Citizen, I like looking at it because the models, the scenery, the environments are gorgeous. And I know one of the guys, I worked with one of the guys who was a concept artist for the original stuff when it went Kickstarter and all the rest. And he produces fantastic stuff. A guy called Gramut Bassin. If somebody wants to go check out his stuff, I can post a link later on.
Yeah, we'll have to share that.
His work is fantastic. I'll get it now. But that's the sort of thing I was getting out of it, just watching this absolutely beautiful world coming together.
Yeah, I think it always seemed like something that would be a lot of fun, but it also feels like it's been too long for me. Like 10 years ago, I would have been all about it. Now I feel like I just wouldn't have the time to actually play it and check it out.
I wonder. I think about games, and I don't play that many games personally. I like tabletop games almost more than video games, I think. But I wonder, a lot of these, World of Warcraft and other big games, they want your attention nonstop. They want you to play that game and pretty much no other game, which I wonder if that kind of concept increases the revenue for that game while decreasing overall spend on overall games. I'm just thinking out loud. I have no data to back any of this up, but I'm thinking, you pay microtransactions, you pay some updates here and there for World of Warcraft or whatever, maybe a subscription fee or whatever. But if you're buying a new $70 game every month, then you might end up actually spending more, and the money just being shared around. So less money for everybody, but more money overall. No idea. I don't know, Dave. You've got a background in this. What do you think?
I'm looking at the comment just there, and somebody saying is there going to be an MMO of the popularity of World of Warcraft. I mean, you could say that Fortnite is an MMO in a sense.
No, it's not. Fortnite's not an MMO.
It's similar.
No. It's you got to have that character progression and item progression.
Which there is.
It's an MMO, but not an MMORPG.
It's
an MMO FPS.
It's an MMO in the same way that games that instance everything are MMOs. They're an MMO, but I don't. Let's
talk about Roblox.
Yeah, exactly. If everything is instance and there's no competition for stuff, and you're not constantly interacting with players, I feel like it's very different from a WoW. It's not the same kind of thing. Like World of Warcraft is, at least originally, like you had your people and environment. Yeah, go ahead.
I would say there's going to be a WoW again. I mean, it will come around again. It's sort of like you see trends in the media space where suddenly vampires are cool for a while, and then something will go back, and then another Lord of the Rings style thing will come out, and then suddenly you'll have an MMO that everybody gets into because everybody's into that sort of thing at the time. And we used to play genre lottery in one of the companies I worked at, where you'd sit there and you go, what's this year's genre going to be? And you just like throw darts at a board to try and work out what it's going to be. And you can see them coming a mile off. Is it going to be sci-fi? Is AI going to ruin us all? I mean, this year has got AI all over it, not just in with what's going on, but you're seeing a lot more films progressing into that as well. And there's that, what was it, Creator or something coming out at the end of the year, which is going to be like the biggest blockbuster of the year. That looks fantastic. Hopefully it's not like the last one that goes in.
Yeah, hopefully that one's good. It looked good. Omega mentioned Ashes of Creation too, and that it could pull that off. If they can pull it off, it'll be the greatest MMO. And I don't know if you guys have followed it. I loosely follow it because I got a couple friends that work on it. It does seem pretty awesome that they had some kind of new ideas that I don't think any other game has successfully pulled off, with region control and becoming the leader of an area and all this kind of stuff. And it seems kind of interesting. Like they've got a lot there, but I haven't played it in a while. Maybe I can get a hold of one of them and get one of them to hop on and just talk a little bit about it for the people who haven't seen it. And it's all in Unreal, but I think it's still just as interesting.
So going back to the layoffs, the thing that I think might concern the viewers, especially people coming out of college or anything like that, is there's a saturation at the moment out there, with a lot of people out looking for work and a lot of them being experienced. I think you'll see a lot of new studios popping up because that tends to happen when all these mass layouts go on. People are pissed off. They go to the bar or whatever, and they sit there chatting with people they just got laid off with and go, we should build a studio. We could do it better. We know what we're doing.
I feel like
and then
that
they go
is
and build a
exactly
studio.
what happens.
It is.
Like,
it's what happened at Sony. I went through 3 layoffs because when they cancel big games, they tend to tell the team, oh, by the way, we're going to lay you all off and we're going to see if there's a place for you at work or in another game or whatever. But basically, your job is gone because your game is gone. And yeah, we all got drunk and went, wouldn't it be cool if we built a game studio? And then 2 sets of people went and built game studios.
Yep, that's funny because that's exactly what happened at Sony for me too. Go out literally like afterwards. They're at one of the restaurants out in Escondido, and all these plans. Everybody's talking about the games they're gonna make and the companies that are forming, and a couple of them did.
Yeah, and then those are successful, and then those become big studios. And one of the ones out of the 2 that left Sony became a very big studio in the mobile space, released some absolutely crazy good titles and did very, very well as a company. And then got acquired 4 years ago. So yeah, it's a thing that happens. So yes, there's going to be saturation for a little bit, but there will be more studios coming up. There's more opportunities to get in at the ground floor as well when these things happen.
Oh yeah, getting in on a startup is, if you can afford it, often.
Yes.
As long as it's not a startup where you're going to be homeless and broke because you have no money and they have no money. Got to be somewhere in there. But getting in on a startup early, even if it's just part-time, can be really, really good. I feel like get in there before things grow and get the opportunities. By the way, before we go on to the Oculus stuff, I know I talked to Dave a little bit about the job market, but I'm curious what you all think of it, and everybody in chat too. Have you guys been finding it much harder to get jobs, much easier? I know like last year I would get probably like 3 emails a week from recruiters looking to hire people, and now I probably get 3 emails a week from people looking for recruiters and looking for jobs instead. It's been a complete flip in what I'm seeing, but I know I'm in a little bubble, so I don't know if everybody else is seeing the same kind of thing. Or what Story is seeing.
Yeah, I'm not actively looking for work, but I'm definitely not getting as many emails from recruiters and stuff that I used to get.
Well, it's funny, on LinkedIn, a load of recruiters I know are now open to work. So it looks like they got rid of a load of recruiters. I'm not joking, like a load of them that I know that I've spoken to in the past, that I've done things with, and they're now there going, yeah, I'm looking for work because they laid off the recruiting. It's funny.
That makes sense. If you're laying people off, you're not recruiting more.
You laid 16% of your workforce off, the recruiters are going to go half the time because you don't need all those recruiters if you're not going to bring a load more people on, because it's never a good sign for a company if they lay off an entire part of their workforce and then hiring a ton of workforce at the same time.
The only thing I work with artists, a lot of them are just independent folks doing art stuff. And one of my artists last year went back to school. He was doing modeling. He wanted to learn animation. So he went to school to learn animation, got out, and found that when he went in last year, there were something like X number of jobs around the country for animators and all this. Now he's found 4 in the entire country for looking for animators. And
I feel like that's one of the ones that's also getting hit by AI a lot too. Like animators used to be very difficult to find, and now I feel like it's gotten a lot easier because of all the tooling. But
it's an interesting thing. But I think the biggest thing is not AI. The biggest thing is just 2023 is a tough year economically for the whole world. There's that war going on. There's inflation. There's always fears of economic downturns left and right, recessions, high interest rate. That's the thing.
But then you think tools like Cascadeur and stuff are making it so that one animator could do the job of 3 now, and they don't have to scale up as much?
But I also feel like those are things that will multiply the value of animators. So instead of getting rid of half your animators, you'll keep them on and just do more and do better and faster. So you'll become more productive as a studio. You'll get stuff pushed out more. You'll make more money, but you're not necessarily going to get rid of them. You're going to get rid of them when you just don't have the money.
I mean, I think that sounds good, like in the aggregate, like if you look at overall stuff, but you're probably realistically going to be in scenarios where you've got 3 or 5 animators, and one of them is doing most of the work because they're able to do the tooling stuff, and then just
But that's the thing.
slowly phase out the less productive ones or the ones that they have personal issues with or whatever else, and then stop needing to ramp up. Because I mean, if you can do all the animation stuff, you're probably not going to be like, hey, let's add a second animator just so we can do more if the one's able to do everything we were doing before.
But the thing that we used to find is we'd take shots and we'd look at what we were going to build. So we have loads of characters in the background, and then we have foreground characters, and we focus our animators on those foreground characters, and we might use AI to use the background characters. What we used to do is literally just let's pull animations from previous projects and stuff and stick them on those characters. And if they look a bit ropey, it doesn't really matter because they're just off to the side or they're just off to the back, or they're doing very basic.
Nobody's going to notice.
Talking with a slight bubble movement and stuff like that. And it looks a bit weird, but nobody ever notices because they're not in the foreground. But I feel like the tools are enabling people to get those looking better, which might be one of the reasons you're seeing such an increase in size of all these games that are coming out now, because suddenly every animation is unique. But I agree with Andrew. I've not yet seen companies not hiring because of AI. It's more, we can do more because we've got AI. Don't get me wrong. There might be an inflection point where it starts to change. I'm seeing a lot more indies do more custom work because there is AI there. And that's a slight difference I'm seeing. But those indies wouldn't have hired for that. They would have just lived with what was there. They would have lived with something they could get off an asset store, or they would live with their ability to create at the level they can create at. Whereas now I think they can offset that by doing more with some AI creation. And that's where I'm seeing some changes, especially when you just see a background or something like that. The amount of freaking AI images that are getting thrown into backgrounds or foregrounds, or everybody's
YouTube
now got an
thumbnails.
amazing. Yeah, I was just about to say, everybody's now got an amazing thumbnail. You go, the last game jam I did, it used to be a case of you do a game jam and you could go, who has experience? Well, we can see from the thumbnails that these people have experience because it's a picture in their game where the game's looking really good and all the rest of it. But the last game jam I was in, every game looked amazing if you looked at it from the thumbnail, because they were all crazy good AI thumbnails, apart from a few people who just went, oh, I'm not into it. I'm just going to produce the picture I've got. But everybody would get some assets and would make it look tidy and all the rest of it previously. But now everything looks amazing.
That's more than just thumbnails, though. Like, we're at the point where it's really frustrating because there's games, I don't want to call out any particular games, but I've seen some come out where even the trailers are like, oh, that looks well put together. But once you see 10 seconds of actual game footage, or even the start menu, you're like, oh, okay, never mind. Like,
that's no different, though.
Well, what I mean is, like, it's interesting now how much stuff where you can take an entire chunk of development and gloss over the actual, because the difference to me, it isn't about the doing it from a copy and paste thing. It's how much technical skill can you bypass. And a lot of people, you usually need technical skill in multiple areas, right? Like game design is more than just, like, if I give you fantastic models, your level design is probably still ass, right? Let's be real. Like, it's a different skill set altogether. So usually those things are very apparent, where you can tell that it's like, oh, someone has skill in area A, but not area B. But now you can get by with a lot of stuff where we're like, if you can generate something, not just the basics, but you can generate enough that if you can fool someone for sequences of seconds at a time, you can get to the point where something looks competent for a lot longer, and it takes a little bit of time to kind of bypass that. And that's what worries me more, is I think it's starting to become interesting where more games are having glaring deficiencies, and you're starting to see now more stuff is glomming around an average of being better level of mediocrity, but the things that are missing are now hyper specific. Like, the complete lack of game design now, to me, is really, like, it's why I keep talking about it in my Discord and stuff, is that because more and more, as all the other stuff has been sheened to kind of a vague, decent, the games that you can put two games which look identical in visual quality, but one of them just feels off, and because people never learned the skills required to, like, get past the looks good enough phase, you know.
So you're saying that you actually need a game designer to work on stuff?
You need an AI.
So somebody that just plays games all day?
You need
No, I
to
think
Don't
that's
even
the
write
thing
any code.
No,
I
yeah,
still
you need game design AI. That's what you need.
Yeah.
But still, like I've told you guys before, sure,
ChatGPT.
that's what my wife would call Salim all the time. She would always ask me for. I've known Salim for I don't know, like 15 years, and I should always be like, so wait, what does Salim do? He doesn't make art, and he doesn't write the code that you're doing. Like, what does he do? He just plays the games. I'm like,
Yep.
yeah, he's a designer. You got to actually do the, and I think it is like probably the most important part. I like to say that engineering is the most important part because without it you can't have anything. But without a good game design and good game designer, you just engineer shit anyway. So
But I don't even
it doesn't.
I don't even need to pick on specific that area. I mean, like, I'm a generalist where I'm not amazing at any one thing, but I know enough about each field that I can spot when someone does know what they're talking about. And so for me, there's a lot of things that, for example, that's why I say menu, because a menu may technically have all the right menu items, but they're not using twins correctly. Or a menu might have a good set of colors, but their layout is incorrect from a weighting perspective. So they've clearly gotten a palette from somewhere, but they don't really understand how to use layout principles. So what I mean is, like, it's not something as glaring as game look good, play bad. Oftentimes it's 2/3 of a single skill set is there, but one of them's missing, or vice versa, where you're like, I don't know which part of this you bought or which part, but over time you're starting to see it's like, okay, so you don't have someone in house who can do this thing, or the pack you got you as far as here, but no further. Because you can get to see more and more how like games where just even everything else is fine, character controller is good, but the physics is off because they bought a good character controller, but they don't understand tweaking the physics for the gameplay. Or the character controller physics is fine, but the jump heights are incorrect for boxes because they didn't know how to position stuff. Like, there's always something where you're just like, there's an aspect of this you never learned, and it's starting to come through in your project.
Yeah, I totally see that. Omega popped this up here, asking about what you guys you're talking about assets and UIs. It made me think of this because when I build like my own game stuff UIs, I almost always just go like 100% to assets, and I am terrible at like menu design and color palettes and all that stuff. Yeah, do you guys are there? I guess. Are there good examples of this somewhere that you would recommend, Story? Like, is there an asset that shows the menu stuff really well, or like a blog or post or something like on any one like specific topic, or you just tell everybody to go to Jason Story's Discord and come join? Because I think that's probably a good place to.
It is like, it's tough to make a holistic anything, right? Like if someone says, just give me the right answers to make it good X. It's like, well, what is the X you're making here? Like, you know, the principles of different things. So I haven't found a particularly singularly good thing, but I have noticed in every field or industry, there tends to be the standouts, right? Like when you first start in game dev, everyone knows Brackeys. Even if you never heard of if you wanted to learn game dev tomorrow, you'll stumble across the name Brackeys eventually because it's ubiquitous in the space. And similarly in other fields, like I could do a rundown of like different fields where there's different people who are like the brackies of their community because like I said, I would research a topic to that degree. But no, there's not really a good all-encompassing solution. That being said, I truly mean this. Almost every field you can get good enough to pass that radar I'm describing in like a month max in almost any field. Like that's not going to make you an expert. You're not going to be able to like hire professionally to do it, but you can fix the things which are like red flags just by understanding. Like if you watch 3 YouTube videos and spend 2 weeks trying it, you'll understand basic color theory. If you watch 4 YouTube videos and try a week or two trying it, you'll understand layout and principle. Like each one of these things is not that complicated. It's just there's a lot of them to learn, and yeah, that's kind of it.
But it's also like a lot of remembering it too. I feel like you could learn it, and then if you're not actively like working on it, it's hard to retain that stuff and remember the right part and the important
That's
points.
the trick, though. You don't need to know it all the time. Like you don't need to be a genius. You don't need to keep principles of color theory, level design in your head. You just need to know them enough to spot them, so that when the time comes to do them, you can go and pull up the same resources you watched 3 months ago, rewatch them, and go, oh yeah, and now you know what you're looking for, and you can reapply the different things, or make notes for yourself on what does or doesn't stand out. I think too many people think you need to no, like there's tons of stuff which I've done once. I don't remember how to do right now, but because I did it once 4 years ago, I'm like, okay, if you give me a week, I can catch back up to where I was and I could apply those principles. That's all I mean. It's just getting
Yeah.
more and more where people think that they can make a game, but then cut out 2/3 of all gameness, which unfortunately does include UI and marketing and all the other stuff, and think they can just hyper focus on this and then be fine. It's like, well, unfortunately, you pick the most multidisciplinary field in the world. You can't just forget the rest of it exists.
Yeah, I agree. There was a comment in here. Somebody wants you to offer some consultations and critique sessions. I don't know that you have time for that, but if you ever get spare time, that might be a service you should open up. Just do an hour-long critique of your game.
I actually
will-
get it. I have people who consult and hit me up on Ko-fi, not regularly, but like from time to time. I've done hour-long consulting sessions on various different things.
Well, there you go. Join the Discord and hit them up. Just I put the link into chat real quick, so you can go join it. It's good discussions, and you can find out all that stuff too.
I thought it
Yeah,
was
I think
cool
that would
when
be
you
cool.
on your channel you did a review of somebody's game. I think both of you were on that episode.
Yeah, I
if
think we've done a
recall.
couple of those in the past. It was a lot of fun.
And when it
Those
comes to
tend to be
color
very
palettes,
code-focused. Yeah.
there's several sites you can look up that will give you color palettes, and you can find complementary colors and stuff. And I think I leveraged some of them when I did my Cubert tutorial for the different cube colors and stuff. I just picked the palette I thought looked good, and
That's another one. So again, this is just like we're getting into micro details, but to me, it's very funny because again, when I talk about stuff you can spot. So, for example, someone might be using a color palette and it looks pretty good, but something stands out, and you look at it for long enough, and you're like, "Oh, I see." So, what they've used is an analog color palette because they specifically chose this color and this color, which combined. But then they've added this other color because they needed another color, but they didn't understand the original color was an analog palette, and so they picked one that was like slightly off, and because of that, it looks discordant with the others. But what they really wanted to do was actually switch to using a triadic color palette. So the fact that they don't know these principles means that like everything looked kind of good, but then like that blue is the wrong blue because it doesn't match the. There's stuff like that which is really funny to me because you can genuinely spot the entire process of they found something, liked it, copied the colors, needed a new color, didn't know which color to pick, didn't want to pick something too close to those two, pick something slightly off from that, didn't understand the principles that built those other colors, pick this color, use that, and then it's like now they're using the weights wrong. It's like you get so much information of what they do or do not know just from the fact that they chose a slightly off blue or something, right?
Or red when they didn't want to have people stop, or green when they didn't want to have people go, or all sorts of things like that. There's a website, and I did post for Jason to post it, and then he left, called interfacinggame.com. And I know Story knows this one as well. And for people out there thinking of building UIs and all the rest of it, maybe take a look at that. Jason will post it when he gets back. But that site has a load of games, and it breaks down the different interfaces, the different HUD elements, and all the rest they actually show, and enables you to look at what that game did and how to do it. Well, not how to do it, but just shows you the layout and helps you learn how to do your next title and what you're doing.
And there's another one, Game UI
So
Database. That's very similar premise.
Yeah,
and if you've ever watched my YouTube channel, there's a talk about Eagle. What I do is I actually go to those sites and I take the images relevant to the projects I'm on and I put them into my own database, tag and label them relative to the project I'm on, do the same with palettes and things. So I basically keep my own. I have a local database of about, I think, 2,000 images of level design, for example. Like I have like 150 images of stairs because stairs are a surprisingly complicated part of game design, and it's very interesting to look at how different games have used stairs and whatever else. So I do this all the time. I think
doors. That was a big thing that went out one year, and everybody was talking about doors. There was GDC talks about it. There was a great talk from Half-Life Alex, a guy who was developing in that, talking about how to do doors in VR because doors are incredibly complicated. Yeah, I'll get Jason, post these last two links from me in Story.
What's great about the UI, these links, I struggle when I'm making UI. I'm not like most people. I'm not very good at it to begin with. But then I always get the size wrong. Like how big should buttons be? and I have no idea. I'm design my window's this big in Unity, right? I'm not. So whenever I end up pressing play on a full screen, I'm like, oh shit, that's huge.
Yeah.
Here. Yeah.
So you got to have a second monitor for your game view.
You do,
I
yeah.
will say though, here's a bit of another secret. As someone who's studied this extensively, most people do. If you overlay like 50 games ranging from the BioShock era up to like modern Horizon Forbidden West or whatever, they're all different. And there's been a trend downwards in sizes because back in the older days, the resolution was lower and it would take up larger elements on screen. So the HUD elements for, again, BioShock was the one that comes to mind, is atrociously big. Like it would be bad now if you look at it as purely objectively a single UI element, and it's got a lot of flourishes and greebling on stuff, which is completely like too big for the space. But modern day UIs tend to lean into the minimalist views of having really thin lines, and so there's not even like a right answer. It's more just a case of, and even this gets into, a lot of people look at a nice UI and they just try to apply a nice UI. But what they don't realize is even the design portion of that's secondary, right? It's information first. So the way you should be approaching it should be more a case of turn off your UI and go, I'm getting killed, but I can't figure out why. I could really do with some information about the health of my character. And so you put health on screen. You're like, okay, where would I want to see this? And a lot of people by default follow the general, I'll just put stuff in the corners. Why? Because in first-person shooters originally, you had HUDs, which represented a heads-up display, which would have information in the corners. But these days, a lot of games are not that, right? A lot of games you're following a mouse cursor. And so if you're thinking about it practically, why would you put the information most vital to your survival at the furthest point from the position on screen with which you're following the tracking of your eyes? Like, a lot of people aren't thinking about it from the correct perspective. That's why more modern games, especially ones that are very fast-paced, tend to put HUD elements around the mouse cursor. They have things which fill or drop or change because your eyes are focused there, right? So it's not just positional about what looks good. It's about informationally what's relevant to me at certain points in time. It gets into some really nitty-gritty stuff, but the long story short is if you want to do good enough UI, start with none, ask yourself the minimum amount you need, place it on screen, place it in places that are easy to see, then make it look nice and make it thematically match your game and so on. But like, in my opinion, it should follow that order. It is important to have it be thematically relevant, but a UI that's easy to use and not thematically relevant is better than one that looks really nice but isn't useful because it's too far away or too small or so on.
And don't lay over the UI over the other important elements if you do it in the middle of the screen.
Yeah. I think another good example of that is like MOBAs. You know, like you're playing, you don't want the health bar off to the side. It's right over every single character. Same with the mana bar. It's literally like right in the center of your screen where you're looking all the time is where the useful information for your character is. You see your health and your energy or mana or whatever you've got right there. You don't have to look off to the corners to go see those things. You probably realistically don't even need a HUD for it. It's just for people who want to mouse over and see
exactly. And Yori brings up a good point with the kind of institutional knowledge portion of it, which is a lot of this stuff is by the time you play it, you start to understand what they mean. Like if I was making a game and it had any kind of currency, I would use a currency symbol, even if it's a gibberish currency symbol, because you'll be confused at first, but the very first time you collect any coins, you'll be like, oh, that's what that means.
That's money. You have to put
like
money.
You don't need any more information. Yeah. So a lot of people also make the mistake of over explaining or putting too much information in, when the truth is you're building a glossary of terms in universe. Like there's the whole thing we talked before about affordances and you know, signifiers and how that stuff applies. But like the rule isn't to make something where everything's hyper clear. It's to make something so it's capable of being clear in a reasonable time in a way that you have institutional knowledge with which to continue playing with.
Yeah. That's very good advice. Words on the UI are almost always bad. Maybe I'll just put them there as a tooltip pop-up thing sometimes if I need to, but that's about it.
Except for dialogue systems.
Oh yeah, but don't
no, you put text in there, emojis only. You should make an emoji only dialogue system asset for the asset.
I guarantee somebody's done that. Like an emoji only dialogue game.
It'll go,
where all the NPCs speak gibberish, and somehow you figure it out because of their.
No, they speak like my teenagers with a bunch of half words and smiley faces to confuse the living crap out of me. Oh,
It does save on the localization, the audio localization, when they go meh, 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 and that's just some
That's
text.
true.
Just saved a ton of money. There you go.
Oh,
No, that's another whole area we could get into. Like, my God, and please, people, this is one thing. Like, if you're gonna do fonts in your game, there's a universal rule in all type: don't use more than 3 fonts ever. Under like your entire game doesn't need more than 3 fonts.
but what if you have a whole pack of like 100?
Yeah.
Me and Story have sat in channels just ranting over fonts and stuff like that, and then praising each other when we find out what each other's fonts we use. Like joined up text, like nice flowy script text, but it fits with what I'm doing. I can't read what it is on my screen, and now you've made a mobile version and kept it. Why do you hate me?
You got to work papyrus in there, though.
It gets even more of a point when you start getting into VR and looking at fonts in VR and text in VR, and suddenly you're like, please just give me an interactive tutorial. Do not make me read this giant panel you've put in front of me that you think's okay and is never okay in any game.
Fine, you have to read the instructions and look at the diagram.
I've said it several times before. There's only one instruction manual I've read in recent history, and that was for my table saw. Like, I don't read the others because obviously the table saw, I like my fingers.
That's exactly the kind that I would read. I read those and like anything that's got high voltage electricity. Like, let's just make sure this doesn't say like not to touch here and there.
But I put a new doorbell, a new smart doorbell on part of my house the other day, and there was no instruction manual. It was like, here's a QR code. And you put your finger over the QR code, and suddenly it gives you an interactive step-by-step with the ability to go back.
Is it the Nest one?
Yes.
The Google? Yeah. They're the best by far. Yeah. The same one.
It's just super simple. Oh, of course, I didn't get through it because I'd actually installed it before I opened it. But it's because I'm that person.
It does show you how to mount it and how to put it sideways and all that stuff, like with little video. Yeah, but that was
it's an awesome, quick, nice and simple.
Speaking of VR,
just red flags. One last thing: if I ever see a paragraph of text in caps, that's it. Like, you don't know what you're doing. Like, that's it. That is one of those blatant indicators to me. If you have more than 2 lines, if you have more than 5 words, and they're all caps, you don't understand the point of caps or what.
But my character is really angry and they're shouting.
That's not the only way you know.
So am I when I read that.
Unless you're writing like some legal contract thing, and that's the disclaimer part at the bottom. Yeah, there's absolutely no excuse. Oh, but I was curious, since you both do a lot of VR stuff and you're talking about fonts, is there like a specific font or couple fonts that you highly recommend and prefer? You said you both agree on them. And when you do the font stuff, do you guys just like put in those fonts and then delete out the rest from the project just to make sure nobody accidentally uses the wrong one? Or how do you go about that?
Wingdings.
Wingdings the whole way?
My font of choice. Yep, every single time. I like to confuse people as much as possible. No, something really nice and easy. My rule of thumb is 1, I don't use more than 2 fonts in my titles. But it's just unnecessary.
And how do you separate that out?
Is it like the only exception is for your title card. Like, if you've got a title of your game, that might be usually just
a totally different font for like the main menu screen.
But everything else is 2. And my rule of thumb is, if I can't read it or I struggle reading it, why the hell is it up there? And I've got lower grade headsets that I put on and try to read the font in as well, because not everybody's got that latest Meta free headset that's got really nice clear resolution or anything like that. And is it fizzing? Is it just glitching in and out constantly because of the distance you're from it, and it can't render the in-between pixels and all the rest? Those are things to pay attention to.
Do you think?
Is there like a default one that you go to? Like, if you're just going to set up a font and you haven't really decided, you have like a default 2 or 3 that you kind of pick from?
I've got a few, and I will list them off. I'll just pull them up.
Story, you remember yours?
Well, to me, again, it's like anything else. It's not like a specific drop-in solution. Fonts mean things, right? Like, if you're using fonts that come from that sort of like serifed backgrounds. They're meant to be professional title fonts. They represent something that's supposed to be literary in nature. If you're doing sans serifs, it's more meant to be read for long paragraph phrases. If you're talking about informational fonts, pretty much any sans serif clean font with thick enough lines that doesn't get issues with VR headsets. So I usually default to your Latos, to your, like anything in the general Google broad font family. I might put like a Fairway for like a title font, it's a little bit fancier, but for the most part, I'll stick with, all of your basic. Literally go to Google Fonts.
So Roboto is one.
Yes.
Montserrat
I use
is
Roboto.
another one.
Roboto in particular is, if you were to ask what my default is, it would be Roboto, because I think you'll see this with most people. If you make an asset pack, if you make any kind of readable thing that works across many styles without really being too specific on details, Roboto is a good generic, works for everything.
Yeah, and Montserrat is another one. M-O.
Bit fancier. I like Montserrat when it's like a little bit more posh.
R-R-A-T. Yeah, so Montserrat. That is another one I go to. It's got a really nice thin font for some things that you might want to use thin fonts for. Though not obviously VR is not great for thin fonts, but on some of the other stuff, it reads quite nicely.
Nice. And then
those are two.
I mean, you kind of, the last question I had on this for both of you, like you kind of mentioned splitting it up and having things that were more like for the fancy reading and for longer reading. How do you break that down when it comes to actual like UI elements? If you're putting like health text, like the number of health, you just use like the less fancy one by default, or do you have like a separation where like you use these for like kind of titles and headlines and stuff, and then use a different thing for the content? Or I'm just kind of curious how you break down.
Yeah, I mean, health's an icon, and then it's a really quite prominent number if you're doing a number or a bar, or a bar if you're going to have a bar as well, or anything like that. So something you can read easily and see easily. I never put massive amounts of text in my game. Like I know you just said, like if you have a large section of text.
Let's say you had like an inventory item panel that had like the item title.
It doesn't have a book.
Have some lore description on it for some reason.
Well, okay, if you want like the most absolute clinical, here's rules to follow to not look terrible.
Just like default rules if you have no idea what the fuck you're doing at all, like as a kind of like a starting point.
Okay, well, default, there's slab and title fonts, and then there's the rest, right? And it's a general rule. If your font looks really fancy, it's traditionally because you saw it in something where it was designed to be a slab font. In other words, very big, written fancy, and it says some dramatic title or word. If that's what you're seeing it used for, do not use it for writing text that's to be read. It's meant to grab attention. It's by design. We can get into really hyper-specific details, like how Gothic fonts are meant to have this particular style, which evokes certain emotion or whatever. But the general broad strokes is if a font is fancy, it is a title font, and it should be used for no more than 3 words traditionally, and it's whatever, top of your bar, top of your category, whatever else. Once you get into paragraph or content or body text, you want to move into any of the other categories of fonts. Traditionally sans serifs, unless again newspaper and you're evoking certain styles, and sans serifs are the ones without the little details on the ends of the fonts. So you're looking at,
they don't have the little tips and curves and all that shit, right?
Which all of the ones we've really described, like Lato and Roboto, are, and they're very clean for reading. And if you've got headers and subheaders, you use the same font, but different font weights. So your titles are bolded versions of the same thing. You do not use different fonts. Your title fonts should be like top of panels. Then whatever your body font is should be consistent throughout with different weighting and sizes relative. You can also use color and things for different differentiators. But in general, your entire project can be two to 3 fonts. I would even go probably, same as Dave, 2 probably is more than fine. 1 for anything it's like a categoric title or a dramatic like entered new area of map. But for all descriptive, all red text for larger than 2 or 3 words, pick your primary basic font and use the different weightings for them. So
you can go overboard even on the title fonts with fancy, because I wanted to use a Celtic font for the Highland Panic logo, and the feedback was like, I can't read it. Like the D doesn't look like a D, and so I ended up, abandoning that for something more readable.
Last night,
and again, that
new game and put it down because the font was too small. I don't even know if it was legible. It was just so damn small. Old, but it's a new phone, so it's a big screen. But I was like, screw this. I can't read any of this. So yeah.
Again, if you go to that site, interfacinggame.com, you have examples. Like they've got Elden Ring in there, they've got the Ascent in there, they've got games, and they show the fonts they're using in those games.
You can click
if
right
you can
through
read it there,
and see
you can read it in game.
Just keep in mind, because one thing will throw people off if they're following rules to the letter. The older the games are, once you get into your Assassin's Creeds and your Mirror's Edges, those games were designed to be on 1080 or less resolution screens. And so the decisions made around font sizes and colors tended to be a lot more for further away TVs that are smaller or for close-up gameplay. So keep that in mind with design. Like you'll notice it trends towards cleaner, smaller lines because we have more resolution to play with. That's not a marker on quality. It's purely just an indication of how we have more to work with.
Very true. Very true.
Side note, one of the things I'm seeing is a lot of the titles are also like all caps. Is that something that you often do too? I find that I do that a lot. Or you either do all caps or small caps.
My broad rule is 3 words is your max. That's it. Like 3 words, fine. I still prefer not to. There's a lot of interesting psychology around how titles affect your brain and whatever, and it comes down to the fact that like we do this with eye saccades, right? Like where eyes are constantly flickering for waypoints and things, and we're very good at noticing something that stands out from like colors or differentiating factors. If you've got a paragraph, like that paragraph of text, if I was to ask you to pick out the word play, your eye would scan, you'd find it, and you'd look away. And if I ask you to refine the word play, you'd find it much faster the second time because you would have mapped the landscape shapes of the peaks and valleys of the paragraph. If I was to do the same thing with the word speech or something else in the bolded text, you have less anchor points. Your brain has less visual information to work with when parsing that. So it comes down to what you're using it for. But in general, caps should be used specifically when you're trying to get attention or to separate it distinctly. But I think almost every other design preference is better. If you want to separate things visually from others, you're better off using color or using location or using any of the other different tools at your disposal for grouping things together. I think caps in general should be avoided for almost anything other than like the word volume there. I wouldn't have had any of the slider bars in caps there.
One of the
what about
things
the small caps? Sorry.
Yeah, this is what I was just about to say. One of the things you can do to change that is have a first letter that's a larger capital than the rest of the letters in the word.
Yeah, like it's the SC option in Text Mesh Pro where you get the kind of thing, you kind of get the same effect, but you get the capitalized smaller words or letters after the first one. Do you use that story ever?
Oh yeah, I mean, again, I'm not. These are not like.
I'm just curious.
I'm giving hard and fast rules because that's kind of vaguely what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
But the truth is, it's always context based, right? Like for example, I might broadly say, don't use stylish fonts for paragraphs. But as people pointed out, in a pixel art game, it might be okay in certain circumstances. But even in those, I would limit it to shop owner names or maybe the title of a product, but not the paragraph description of what the product does or so on. So it comes down to, there will be cases that are different, but yeah.
That makes sense. All right, I guess Greg has got to drop off. So I'm going to say bye to Greg and see you next week. And then before we go, I wanted to, whoops. I hit it right when you were saying goodbye. I hit the button. Sorry. But before we go, though, I wanted to see if we could talk just briefly about the virtual reality stuff. By the way, the text thing, you guys have got me having flashbacks of like the chat windows that have like the super fancy text, where like the old Diablo 4 text in chat windows in a couple of the old games I used to play and MMOs and stuff. Right, especially with all the themes and stuff. But anyway, yeah, VR stuff. So
not just VR though. It's the Meta Connect.
Sorry, Meta Connect stuff. I haven't seen the whole announcement yet. I haven't had a chance to watch the entire thing, but I saw a little bit of the highlights, and it seems like it's somewhat interesting. And I assume Story's probably going to have some thoughts on this too, because I know you do VR stuff a little bit more than I do, at least. And what's up, Dave?
I was going to say there were 3 pillars that he came out and spoke about. When he turned up on stage, most people thinking it's going to just talk about the headset. It's going to be primarily on the headset, but he gave as much space, if not more room during the actual conversation, to the middle section, which was AI, and the third section, which was their AR glasses, the Bose glasses. So there were 3 pillars out there. It wasn't a VR event by any stretch of the imagination. There was VR there, but there were very prominently 3 pillars there that he was talking about.
Yeah, that was a surprise to me too, because I kind of expected it to be heavily VR based. But I mean, it is Meta's a huge company; they own all those other things, so it makes sense that they're diving into the AI stuff. So like the AI sticker generation, and it seems like there's a lot more going on with Facebook and Instagram there. Which part do you guys think is most exciting? The VR stuff, the AI stuff, or the new sunglasses?
I'm going to be controversial with my pick because most people will think I'd pick the VR stuff, but I'm not going to. I'm going to pick the other 2.
You got to pick one.
Oh, I've got to pick one. Okay, I'm going to go with the sunglasses then for shits and giggles. The AI stuff looks great. It's an integration for the general public, is the way I looked at it. You could talk about ChatGPT, we could talk about Bard, we could talk about the rest of it, but have they proliferated into the general public in a big way? Not really. Whereas you look at this and it looks like a proliferation. It's in my apps that I use. Well, not my apps that I use. I don't use Instagram. My wife uses Instagram all the right. I'm an Instagram boyfriend. But it's in there. I want to do a sticker for something, so I'm just going to type in I want this sticker. I want to look at recipes. I want to talk to Snoop Dogg as a dungeon master. I want to, it was funny. It was gimmicky, but it was funny as hell. And I want to talk to these different personalities that they've given these AIs to go forwards with. But it was a proliferation. It wasn't, I'm going to go to this bare bones chat window that would be ChatGPT or Bard or something like that. It is, I'm going to go and use this in the place that I'm using it in. I'm not going to something and then copying it to put it into something else. I'm in Instagram. I want to send my friend a penguin in a motor car as a sticker because we're talking about driving in Alaska or something. Even though that's probably not penguins in Alaska. I've just shown it. Yeah. Anyway.
Well, that's why you got to use AI to make your penguin in Alaska,
exactly. Right? So the proliferation there was very interesting, and it was very early and kept saying early all the way through. It's great to see somebody go, and we're going to do privacy, and we're going to do privacy, and we're going to do privacy, and we're thinking about what we're doing. We're thinking about what we're doing. We're not just throwing it out there. We're testing this stuff, and we've got it for business, but only certain businesses can use it at the moment, and we're monitoring those heavily, and we will bring those in later on because everybody is scared of the brands getting destroyed by the AI suddenly turning into a Nazi. So the proliferation of AI was brilliant. I like to see that. And then the third one on the AR glasses, they're probably not going to go very far because people still are. Even when Snapchat put out their glasses, it was kind of like, all right. So I could see it going further than something like the Snapchat glasses, and I could see it definitely going further than the Google Glass.
Yeah.
But I like to see it. And the integration of you being able to talk to it and it not just being there's a screen in front of you that you have to use a separate interface to use that screen. There's a screen in front of you that you can interface with when you're there. You're going to see a lot more people just standing there talking to themselves again.
There's no screen on these glasses, is there?
No, you do. Sorry, I've got it all messed up. You've got the camera and everything, and you're doing the touch on the side. And you're doing all the things, and you can talk to it, and it talks back to you. And supposedly not everybody can hear your conversation like the first one. And there's a really cool charging case. But yeah, so I was more towards the last two, even though I'm not going to buy myself a pair of those sunglasses. I liked it. That might just be because I've been burnt out by VR. I've just had VR, and then somebody brings out another headset, and I'm like, oh, great, it's another headset. Yeah, it's smaller. Yeah, it's thinner. It lasts a little bit longer. There are better lenses in it, and all the rest. But I'm just like, okay, I will probably end up getting this headset at some point. But it's still a headset for me, and I'm burnt through just looking at them so much.
Oh, I think it's all good points. I got some thoughts on this headset too, but I'm curious. What you two think? Story, Andrew?
Yeah, I will say my
I only
take, and this is
one. Before story goes off, I've got one thing to say. I haven't looked. I know is I
Okay.
hate camera on glasses. I still want to punch people who might be wearing that. So yeah, that's my one thing. So there you go.
Really? I don't know why. Like, I mean, I feel like everybody's got cameras all the time. Like, it doesn't seem to be very different.
I was on the train once going to work, and I was sitting in one of those seats where you're facing somebody. It was a packed train, pre-packed train, and the guy was in front of me, was on his phone like this. And I'm like, is he taking a picture of me? And I look, and then he goes like this and goes like this. But now that he's next to the window, so I see in the reflection his camera app is up. So he was 100% taking a picture of me. And I called him out.
Why is he taking pictures? You sure he wasn't in selfie mode taking pictures of himself?
There's a reason he was taking pictures of me. Come on, Jason. Let's
Were you dressing a little too revealing? Was it one of those topless days?
I've been making a day in the lead game dev video, but the reality, I called him out. It was very.
Or he was sending it to the police.
As a guy,
I spotted a strange looking person on the train.
Yeah, as a guy, it's one thing, but you can imagine what people who are more likely to be having their picture taken might feel, or situations that they might get into. The idea of, especially Meta, coming up with glasses that somebody's going to eventually have an application that searches the internet, so you can stare at somebody and be like, "Didn't I go to Cornell with you?" Because it just happened to find their LinkedIn or what. There's all these. I don't like it. I just don't like it. There is a privacy that we all basically have, and we should hold on to that and protect it a little bit more than these glasses will probably allow for. So that's my box rant. Jay can now talk.
I would say my answer to this is boring. It's the same as almost all of these topics, which is, well, one, I think everyone agrees, once you're doing something for a profession, you actually pay less attention to the news around it than when you're actually not, because you're too busy doing the thing rather than like reading up on it. So I'm actually far less informed on the specific details, because I know what I know from what I was told months ago when I started doing this stuff and needed SDK access to things. But I don't actually know what's technically been announced or new products or whatever. But even still on that front, when it comes to all of this stuff, I try to play the long game, because I just think it's so easy to get up in arms and pay like hyper attention to detail and stuff and get really like make plans around stuff. But for me, I look at it and go, some things last, some things don't, and it's very hard to gauge those. Like if you look at things like video footage and people's relationship to cameras, like if you look at the proliferation of tech in media, you look back at old movies and everyone thought everyone would be doing video calls, but then people realize a lot of people hate video calls because they don't want to be on camera. And so the actual practicalities of reality versus standards, and then that changed once people became more associated with it, when they were more comfortable during the Zoom era when everyone was left at home. So it's very hard to guess. And to me, I try not to look at what's happening now. I try to look at how this will proliferate through, society. And if I was a big company like Meta, my goal would be to aim for where AR is going to be in 12 years. And that's probably going to be everyone will have some AR device. I think that's just a given.
Some glasses that have a display on them and report info, or something similar. Yeah.
So their goal isn't to make this product good or the next one or maybe even the next one. It's to make you very comfortable with the concept of AR just being another thing that exists, being predisposed to it with disposable income, and also to associate their name with those products. That's it. So when the time comes that you're buying your next tablet, there's a reason why tablet and iPad were synonymous for a very long time. That was not a design. That was not by accident. People wanted those two words to be interchangeable in your head. And in the same vein, that's going to happen with Meta glasses or AR glasses or whoever gets to choose what the branded name is going to be. So I'm not super interested in any one product. I'm looking at where this is going, and even things like to Andrew's point about cameras on the glasses. I mean, people used to give out when cameras were added to street corners, and they would freak out. It's like getting petitions to take them down. Then people freaked out when cameras were added to mobile phones. Like, oh my God, there's cameras in your pockets. Now, like the needle will move. It'll always move. People will stop caring as much. Whether that's a good thing or not, it's a whole different conversation. But the truth of the matter is, there's no point in fighting what you have zero control over. There is things worth fighting, and there's stuff you can fight your relationship to these changes. But in terms of the societal state of this stuff, there hits a point you have to be pragmatic about what will or will not benefit you or hurt you. And from my perspective, none of this stuff is particularly, it hasn't reached any peak point yet. This is all still in the we're figuring it out phase on both sides, for both the consumers and for the companies.
I think you made a really good point there on the brand thing too. Sorry, Andrew, but just because like I know a lot of people who, when they think about VR, they just call it an Oculus. They don't know that there are other alternatives. Like,
I mean, like Kleenex.
Yeah, and I mean the glasses. The glasses are Ray-Bans, and Ray-Bans are synonymous with a whole heap of types.
Because imagine, look at the difference, right? They're not marketed as VR glasses sponsored by Ray-Ban, whatever. They're
or
marketed
Facebook
as
glass.
Ray-Bans. Yeah, they are Ray-Bans with some VR stuff in it. It's just that little extra bit is like, because they want you bridging the gap mentally between what is or isn't technology.
They're AI glasses instead of AR glasses.
But to jump onto the gaming, go on, Andrew.
Real quick, the one next person with these glasses now is going to be some sort of technology that basically keeps the cameras from seeing about this much. So now I'm wearing my glasses, and my glasses have a camera, but they also have a thing that blocks other people's cameras from, like, that's kind of blinds other cameras a little, so that they can't.
Oh, you can
take a picture
you can
of
get some of those. Yeah, get yourself one
So
of
just
those.
build that
There
into
was
the
a
glass
cap
so
that was
that
going around for a
you can
while.
look around. Yeah, you can go and you can get all the AR goodness, because there's amazing things with AR. I look forward to being able to walk down the street and get directions with that, but then you can't faces with it.
Well, the other part of it too, the other thing that's worth noting as well is that I love the phrase, if you make something idiot-proof, they'll make a better idiot. And it's true. Like, it doesn't matter what it is, that in all things, like, a lot of people seem to think like it, there, for every person that's pushing to make this more ubiquitous from a tech perspective, there is somebody out there who hates it and wants to tear it down for possibly good reasons as well. Maybe they don't want the level of piracy intrusion there is. So it is an arms race. All of this stuff is. There's a reason. All of the tech stuff is an arms race on both sides. So for every product that's released that pushes the envelope in one direction, there'll be ones that push it in the other. A common one will be there will be things you can wear which will mess with sensors. There's already the equivalent for audio stuff. It's like literally right now, a lot of people don't realize there are products you can buy which will make it very hard for you to appear on camera. There's products you can buy that will block your audio being heard by a lot of these systems by reversing the audio waves and causing it to distort. Like, there's tons of things you can do already if you're hyper into that particular area. And so as time goes by, there's going to be anti-hats that block these kinds of support stuff. That's going to happen.
There's already the t-shirts you can buy that have like faces or things that look like faces on them. So facial recognition software can't pick up your face. They just literally start picking up your t-shirt and they freak out about it, which is, I mean, the t-shirts are god awful ugly. But then I'm not a fashion icon. Maybe they're gorgeous.
Yeah, you're gonna find out next year that those are the hit T-shirts, and everybody has to wear faces.
Maybe they are. There we go. You wear faces, so maybe somebody can wear Andrew's face all over them. So Andrew could be in more places having it just take.
Or you can get your COVID mask, your COVID 2025 mask with a face on it, so I can look like somebody else.
You can get a beard, and you can be a story.
That's right. Beard.
Yeah.
Color changing
Fluffy hair,
fibers, so you can change the color of your beard at any time. Yeah.
Oh,
job done. But going to the bit that's more into the games bit and all the rest of it, the headset itself.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit.
There were, and I only watched the key presentation and a couple of little presentations, but there were some digs at Apple in the actual presentation where they went spatial computing for $500, where they were going, this isn't a $3,500 headset. This is a $500 headset. And look at all the features it has. That
is it officially for sale yet? I can't remember if they've done the.
Yeah, you can pre-order it at the moment for $500 or wherever currency is in your area. And the other interesting thing is they went hard on games. Like if you watch the Apple presentation, games were a side note. If you watch the Meta presentation, games were it. And that's what they were talking about. They did mention, and we have some business stuff as well. But it was all about the games predominantly. I mean, yes, there were business bits, and they were talking about their Meta for Business, which is their new rebranding business thing that companies are still going to go, it's not called Facebook, but we know it's still Facebook. Like, we're not going to integrate that into our servers.
You don't want to use Facebook Business with a slightly different URL?
The amount of horrible conversations I had in the enterprise world where people were like, we want to use Oculus, but we don't want to use Facebook for Business because we told our IT department we wanted to use Facebook for Business and they shouted at us. And now we don't want to go in there anymore and they shut the door. Like, it just wasn't. So this is the rebranding attempt where they're going to come out and say, now we've got this thing that can monitor all the headsets, can update the stuff. You can have multiple users using it and all the rest of it. And we'll see how that comes out for business and all the rest. But going back to the point, games were massive. Like, they were just talking games and pushing things out there. Funny, though, that some of the games there were being shown were 2-year-old games because people are starting to complain about lack of content for VR. And that's something
I will say, though, and I don't think it's a secret, they are trying to fix that insofar as if you want to make a VR game, let's just say you might be able to get funding. They're very open about the fact that right now, if you reach out to them with a good enough idea, I know many people who are doing so, you can get a large project, relatively large, funded almost entirely. So you're going to start seeing more. That is going to happen. There's going to be more content. Whether it's good or not, it's a whole different conversation. But yeah, they do have to. That's kind of where it's going. And to your point, yeah, games sell VR headsets while Word doesn't. And that's why, like, the only reason Apple are going the other way is because they're not actually trying to sell you the headsets. They don't want you to buy them. They want you to be amazed by them. And so they can advertise the products, and there will be some people who will buy them. But again, like, they want you putting on the headset and looking at 40 seconds of a 4K or 8K movie and being wowed in store. So when you go home, you can dream about possibly someday owning it. That's it. I don't think they really care right now, at least for anything past that point. But on the other hand, Meta wants you to have it on your shelf, and they want you to have a reason why you'd want to use it. And so the entire use cases or intent is very, very different. Although I do agree with you, Dave, I'm not sure how much of a differentiating factor it is. I do know they're putting a lot more resources into this stuff than they have on previous ones, and they're putting a lot of their eggs in this basket, which is interesting. It leads me to believe they're pushing for a few things that I've seen that are kind of going to be interesting. Whether they're interesting enough to claw back the mainstream from the general sense of it being not that interesting is a different conversation. I know I'm personally, same as you, burnt out. I don't know if that's the general consensus, but I do feel like I want to be excited about VR/AR again. I'm not there yet, but I could be. I'm not completely off the train, but I'm like, it has to do something. That it has to be more than a promise of a future with no particular use case yet, you know.
Yeah, and there was other things like Alad's just pointed out. Sorry, I can't pronounce your name. Alastor. Xbox cloud gaming on the headset, so you can get your big screen up and you can play your games, all your Xbox titles and all the rest. That was a nice partnership that came up. That was interesting.
It is, but
it's not
the truth
VR
is,
games, but
yeah, but you don't even need those. Like, that's the truth is. There's a lot of products now coming out which are just screen glasses. There's like at least 6 different companies who are producing glasses with high-res output and maybe even a gyro sensor if you want to get fancy. But like, that's fine. If all you're looking for is an in-your-pocket 4K 100-inch screen, then that's much easier to produce.
But this is one of those things where they're trying to substitute a lack of content with having more content by partnering with people to do that sort of thing. So they're saying, yes, we're building up our library even more, but did you know you can also play all your games on there? So if you've got a console or you've got a Microsoft, whatever it is, license, I can't remember what it is, the subscription, and then you can basically do that. And then they came out and said they're going to have a subscription system for their games as well.
Meta is?
Yeah, so you can now subscribe, and they will send you. They'll have a couple of games each month or whatever it was.
My hot take is I think that's a dangerous road. I'm very worried there because It's very much pro consumer. It may not seem like it, but software as a service models are in the long run designed to be pro business. They love being able to they love being able to do any finances off a steady income stream rather than reliant on sales. So obviously it's why it's beneficial to them. But a lot of people look at that and go, oh, so it must be bad for me. And it's like, well, no, actually, things can also be good for you, at least in the short term, which is software service models have to convince you to spend money regularly, which is a very tough sell, which means they have to over promise. You get the whole loss leader concept where they're giving you things effectively for free, or that cost them money in terms of server time to get people on board, because the subscriptions you forget about that you consistently take part in is worth more money to them in long term. So yes, that's good, as in like legitimately I got to play Starfield for $2 because I bought the thing and I have no intention of buying the game, right? So there's those benefits can be good for us. The downside is the bit that people I don't think will appreciate the dangers of until it collapses in on themselves, like it's currently doing with Netflix and the rest of the TV market, is if you do democratize pricing to the point where everyone can get AAA titled games for a few dollars here and there, nobody will ever buy games. And if nobody buys games, then nobody will pay to make games. And if nobody pays to make games, the entire quality will boil down to people who do it with whatever resources they have lying around, or whatever's barely enough to kind of sell whatever product they're doing. So I think it's a dangerous precedent to set this. Already games are too cheap. Like this is not just as someone who works in the thing making it, but as a consumer, we need to go back to the fact that you expect to be paying X amount of money for X amount of hours of content or footage. I don't think getting a whole different conversation about whether hours is a good metric for games. It obviously isn't in terms of quality, but the general point being, if you can get a AAA title for what's in your pocket, the entire games industry is going to collapse. It's just like, that's it. That's just going to happen. And it's a dangerous precedent that we're getting there already. We're starting to get to the point where everyone assumes to have all of the latest games for just a few dollars.
And that seemed to be the differentiator when it first came out. The fact that you'd have this subscription, but it was to titles that were old titles, or there are a couple of years in the past that they came out, and that meant that those games weren't selling much anymore anyway. But now you can play
PlayStation 1
that
was
game
great.
you missed out on.
PlayStation going, all of our previous PlayStation games, we're not remaking them. We're not even going to probably remaster most of these, but you can just turn on and play if you want nostalgia. It's like, cool. That's a really good price to value proposition, and it doesn't interfere with other markets.
Yeah, but now they're saying, right, your latest games are in this service. Yeah, I get your point, and I agree. It could start affecting games in the long run. The other thing to go into the meta thing is they pushed hard on their mixed reality, because, of course, Apple went super mixed reality with their headset and were showing loads of mixed reality items. So Meta went and done it as well, and you saw Stranger Things coming up where things would appear in your room. I'll be honest, this is kind of like the HoloLens thing where they said, look, that wall will have something appear on it, and that wall will have something appear on it. For me, there aren't enough games that actually use the room. Like, it could appear, a portal could appear there, a portal could appear there. Why do I care? If the room was completely covered, the portals could still appear there. They're not doing anything with the room. Like, the room is incidental to this point, though it means I don't trip over stuff. So maybe it's good if you've got coffee tables everywhere and you're not moving them. But I'm still not sold on a lot of this mixed reality gaming until there is stuff that I build into the room that stays persistent with a lot of it.
There's a bigger problem with mixed reality gaming, which is unfortunate. And it's one of those things you don't see until you start doing it. So I may or may not have been playing with these exact APKs for the last 6 months. And so a lot of this stuff is very much in my mind. And one of the things we
maybe
learned...
in your mind.
Yeah, maybe. One of the things which we came across pretty early was like the space issue. In VR, it was like really big things are really cool. So you take that reasoning and you bring it into VR, and it's like, that's all good and well. But when it's your desk, everything big is claustrophobic, because not only do people not tend to have much empty spaces on their walls and surfaces, even the spaces you do have, you tend to have a sense of the space around you. So if you want to have an interactive component, so say you wanted to summon a computer terminal that people could interact with, how big can that be? It can't be as big as your real computer because it's taking up the real space. And it can't be too small that you can't interact with it with effectively little buttons and dials. So long story short, everything we tried to make, we ended up consistently shrinking down and down because it got to the point where we're like, we do want mixed reality. It looks really cool, but the most interesting parts were almost always the parts that would like break apart a wall and give you a different environment, because that gave you a sense of expanding space. Anything which contracted space actually felt uncomfortable and claustrophobic. And also people would have the same problem that VR does, which you didn't think about, is if you want to play a mixed reality game, you have to allow your space to be supporting for doing so. In VR, you'd have to push your furniture away to have space to walk around in. In AR, you have to clear your tabletops and surfaces to give you space to put the virtual elements onto. So like already they're hitting that boundary of like, well, it's got a lot of the same psychological problems, that it's not just pick up and play like the promise would be. So it's already interesting. Like I'm already, the things I thought would be a problem aren't as much as a problem as I thought, but that these other areas that had never occurred to me in terms of practicalities of use are actually cropping up more as you start to design for it.
That is surprising. Go ahead.
What was that cleaning fad that came in a while ago where you had to see if something gave you joy and then you would throw it away or you'd keep it? I can't remember.
Mary Kondo.
Yeah, Mary Kondo.
Yeah.
That should be an app, an MR app, Mary Kondo app. You put it on and you say, it tells you your room is too cluttered. Put this stuff away. Move this stuff over there. Now you have found feng shui. You know, that's, yeah.
Maybe you should hit her up and then get that Facebook.
No, you're okay. I don't need to do that. That's not the sort of thing I'm looking for. But if she's out there and she wants to pay me tons of money to build it, then, you know, I am available. Yeah, that would be interesting to play out. I'm trying to think of the other things that came in to the announcement. Pancake lenses, obviously.
They're great.
They're amazing.
I can probably hide the numbers, but I'll just say, like, demonstration. Like, why? Like, look at the width. It's so much thinner now. Like the previous headset was here. Like, legitimately, it's half the size of the previous generation of headsets, which is awesome. Like, it legitimately is, like, for the whole wearing these things long term, pancake lenses are not a small addition. Like, they're one of the things I didn't know I wanted, but now that I have, it's like, oh yeah, this is way better. Like, it's really clear, it's really thin, and it doesn't have a lot of the straps still suck. I'm sorry, Meta, but your straps absolutely suck. Like, all of that stupid headband.
They have to sell the strap accessory.
Yeah.
Which sucks even more. I hate the new I actually have the premium strap, and I still prefer the crappy old strap because I just, this whole design is terrible. Like the whole, yeah, whatever. That's a different conversation.
Is the new one still the ratchet thing on the back of the head?
No, it's the loose cable pull 3 different angles of nonsense.
Oh, right, yeah.
Like the ratchet one's not the premium is still the ratchet one. And by the way, you suck for having the new premium ratchet one not be the same as the old one. If you own the premium ratchet connector, you can't use because they've put the USB charge cable on the thing. So even if you've got the expensive thing, you have to not use it because it only works with the Quest 2 and not the Quest 3. It's just little annoyances, just unnecessary. Yeah.
They gotta make up the money they're losing on those $500 headsets.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was only a couple more things really. One was that they put out NBA, so you can now be courtside in the NBA because they're sticking cameras all over the NBA to have the basketball games.
I feel like
live.
that'll actually sell headsets, though, surprisingly. Like, there are people that are into basketball and into mostly like my friends that are into playing the basketball games, the video games, the whatever that one is, NBA 2K20, whatever. Like, they're all interested in that because they like basketball, right? And they like that
I do think, yeah, like, it's funny. Of all of the stuff I've seen, the fact that I can wear the headset for longer without being annoyed, that's like one of the biggest surprise actual benefits. And I think that has big long stream effects where it's like, I don't hate putting it on. Like, I can go, oh yeah, I'll just throw it on and then look at some stuff. That's been a strong addition. But I think in terms of actual content, to me, the most interesting part is the thing that nobody in the entire world cares about, but I think is the coolest thing of the whole lot, is they have really good sensors in the controllers now. The control, well, they did in Pro. Pro actually technically is better than these ones, but these ones are pretty good relative to the last ones. And what that means is they have an entire haptics API, which is probably the best haptics I've felt since the PS5. So everyone freaked out when the PS5 came out and it had those like gyroscopic haptic stuff. I would argue the ones in the Quest 3 are as good, if not better, which is really like surprisingly interesting in VR, because you end up with like I said, being able to hold something and clink a glass and feel an ice cube bounce around in your hand. And that stuff is like mind-blowingly cool for immersion, because it ties in everything else. It ties in the missing haptics for normal stuff. It ties in the audio side of it. It seems underwhelming into the scale of all of the like much more complex technical problem solving of like inverse kinematic, full body track, whatever. But in terms of game feel, the most presence I ever felt has been, oh look, there's an ice cube in my glass. Like I can feel it.
Just that little haptics.
Yeah.
Do the controllers get cold now too? Heat up?
Not yet. That's the other hand where I'm holding the actual whiskey glass. But you know,
You attach a fan to it. I know they kept going for a while when they were talking about metaverse. This is previous Connects and all the rest. They were talking about somebody putting on a headset and spending their day in the headset working and all the rest of it. Obviously, becoming lighter is going to be a big thing with that, because people are going to get neck ache even wearing the previous versions. I still don't think people are going to be putting these things on for their entire day. I know Meta tried to dog food by saying everybody has to have their meetings in the metaverse for a while, but I don't think that's a policy they have now. Maybe I'm wrong.
I'm sure it's not a policy everybody obeys all the time.
Well, it's a value thing. Like I truly mean this. Like you can't. Well, you can, but it's not going to be very compelling if you force people through just repetition to engage in systems. Like the whole point is technology should solve problems. And if the problem is people aren't wearing their headsets, you've got the wrong problem. The problem shouldn't be people have to wear the headset. The problem is, why do people want to put on the headset? Like, you don't need to tell me to wear a pair of headphones because I want to, because they make my experience of the media I'm consuming better, right? Like, you want to get to a world where whatever it is you're using, like, again, the PS5 is in a box, but not the controller, because the controller is really good for the kinds of games I want to play with. Like, you don't need to tell me to do this. It's something I want to do when certain kinds of games, So it needs a value proposition. And I've said this from the Oculus, the original dev kit days. It is currently a solution without a problem, and we need to figure out what it is it's solving. And I just don't think business in headsets is not it yet, at least not until they're thin enough. And gaming sounded like it, but then everyone just made the exact same 12 games with different paints on it. And it's like, you need to really go further with it. And my suggestion has always been, the one thing it gives you that nothing else does is presence, which is like the whole interaction stuff. And so we should be leaning into the fact that the VR headset can detect what you're looking at, use that as game mechanics and features and stuff. And we should be using the fact that you can engage with characters and things narratively in ways you can't do in the real world. So it just feels to me like it's a waste of whatever it promises. People aren't really engaging with what I think would actually make people want to use it,
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And this digital twin move, it's starting to irritate me a lot, where people go, we need digital twins for everything. And I get it. Some things you want digital twins for because you want to show somebody the Roman Colosseum or something like that. It's great for history and stuff like that. But when people are going, I need a digital twin of my house because why did you buy a headset? Just take the headset off. You're in your house. It annoys the hell out of me.
That has always been my biggest frustration. Like the amount of times I've had conversations with people and they're like, oh, I can walk over and pick up this mug. It's like, cool. I can look at it and teleport it to my hand because that's what I actually want to do. Why are you inventing limitations into your game? I want superpowers. I don't want real life pains in the ass of like, having to do the things that I already can do, but don't want to do,
And Meta had a thing in this latest presentation where they talked about portals, where you could be in your headset and you could put up live things around your room. Like you can have a video of your family playing on the beach in the corner there, playing live, and you could do this over there with that. I was just like, yeah, no, I'm good. I don't need that in my life.
Like I've never used any of those really, because I've tried to figure out what problems could this solve in my life, and the closest I ever got is you're expecting a delivery, so you can put up your security camera up on a shared screen, so watch when they're coming to the door, and bring up a second monitor, and you can then work on whatever it is. But again, I can do that with my phone, so there's no real.
You can just get a notification on your phone when they show up at the door.
I ring your doorbell.
Yeah.
Well, that's why the most interesting of all of these different gimmicks I've ever seen is one company that came out with a overlay layer that would let you have like a virtual watch in any VR game, and that would allow you to display a screen on your wrist, which would just be like a portion of a different monitor. That was game changing because you could do all the stuff I said, where I could actually decide to play a full VR experience and go, oh, I can just literally check my front door or check my messages without having to go and like peek under the bloody lens of the thing. And bringing up the third party big thing removes your immersion. I wanted the ability to just glance at something. So those things to me are much more compelling.
Does everybody not have 4 monitors sitting in front of them, surrounding them?
Not anymore. I used to. Now I have one. I don't know if I told you. I switched to that one ultra wide and got rid of all the others. It is nice. It's a little bit weird for some scenarios, but yeah.
I have 3 only because I got 2 laptops: work laptop, my laptop, and then the ultra wide that shares.
But I have a little Google device over here for my cameras, so if somebody comes to the doorbell, I know there.
I have a like literal. I don't know if you can I reach this without breaking everything. I just have a second monitor, one of these little paper thin monitors that I use as a secondary, and to me that does everything I need because I figured out very quickly that I've had every variation. I've had 12 monitor rigs. I've had ultra wide monitor rigs. I've had triple monitors with 2 verticals. I've tried every possible combination to figure out what works for me. And I realized that from a mode switching perspective, all the other ones felt like homework. I now have to actively choose to put energy to look at other screens when, like, realistically, they're not helping me. They're just more toys to play with, which was getting in the way of productivity. But I realized 2 screens is the sweet spot. The thing you're working on and the addendum information, whether or not you need controlling your music or research or whatever else. So I found 1 big screen, 1 small screen suits everything I need. And past that point, I found using tools to automate that faster is infinitely better. Learning to use multiple desktops, learning to use launchers to quick launch and switch tasks. I can now switch tasks with like 3 clicks on my keyboard. I can jump between things. I don't need to have everything available at all times, you know?
I mean, using Synergy.
Synergy
Is a cool app. Parsec is a really cool app too. If you haven't tried it out, it's my new favorite. I keep telling everybody.
Unity app, right?
Huh?
That's the Unity app. Parsec?
Yeah, it's the Unity one. It's a bit different though. It just lets you like remote desktop and do game. I use it to use my laptop and remote into my desktop system, so I can do game development with my high-end GPU from my non-overheating laptop, and I still get 60 frames a second over the network and audio and everything, and it just works.
Nice.
Blew me away the first time I heard about it and tried it.
For anybody who's like doing the whole like I need more monitors thing, challenge for you. Literally just spend 3 weeks. Learn how to use the multiple Windows desktops thing.
Windows key and arrows.
Yeah, Windows keys, arrows, Windows shift. Just learn those different shortcuts. And once you can do that, you can literally have the entire thing switch from 2. If you have 2 monitors, that's what's perfect for me. 2 monitors where I can have full screen Unity and then full screen Google for like researching stuff. I can press another button and I have full screen my Zoom, my Discord, my whatever for any conversation stuff I have to do. And I have another one, I can press it again and I have full screen. I have Notion for the stuff we're doing as well as my to-do list and tasks for the day. I can with 1 shortcut jump between the mode of interacting with people for work stuff, full screen focus on work stuff, and then planning for whatever work stuff. It's everything I need. And you can always add more or less when you need to. Like, you don't need more screens. That's not also like doing this is not better than just pressing a button and keeping your eyes exactly where they are and completely recontext switching what you're doing. Makes a lot more sense if you just try it for 2 weeks.
I'll be actually switching down in my Office 3.0. I'll be going to 3 monitors instead of 4.
Is that all?
I would recommend 1 big one. Give it a try for a little while.
I have to have one of them is actually a drawing.
Oh yeah,
because I do all my sketching and my drawing and all the rest. So I pulled that out, and that actually moves on an arm that I can move around and draw on. And then I'm just going to have 2 other ones, and that's it. I don't need my 4th one. I don't even really use it.
That was my
But it
situation.
looks pretty fancy.
Yeah, it looks cool, but you end up using it like once a week, and then it's like a distraction. Yeah.
To be honest, I have my code on my one side, and then I have like API doc on the other thing. And that's the thing. I have the API doc. I'm not sitting there reading the API doc constantly. It's up there. I find what I need, and then it pisses off. Like, and that's now gone. I did have every now and again, I do have 2 pieces of code up there that I'm debugging at once because I'm doing hardware and I'm building custom hardware that's got code running, and then I've got the screen. I've got something debugging on this side and all the rest. and I need to have those up there. But it's such a rare occasion now. I just don't need it.
Well, I like what I find fascinating is like if you pay attention to yourself and your subconscious behavior, you can often find frictions and stuff that you don't realize. One of the big ones is the classic, should I listen to music while I work? Well, I always go back to the if you're stressed and you need to fix something and it's broken and you're listening to music while you're working, what are you going to do? Nobody will tell you to do this. You will pause the music and concentrate because this is important and I need to think and I can't have this music distracting. So you subconsciously know when something's really to the wire and you need to solve it, you'll turn off the music. Likewise, if I'm reading documentation on the side and I'm learning something and I'm trying to solve a problem, but it's a big pile of documentation, I will eventually get frustrated, drag the window to the main screen and pay real attention to it like a real person as opposed to glancing over at it because it needs real attention. And so when I start doing this and I notice, why do I keep, what is my behavior telling me? It's that this is suboptimal because my own brain, when it needs to really try, fixes the suboptimal and moves it to optimal. And so why do that at all? Why not think about what I'm actually looking for? If it's glancing, I put glance stuff there. If it's real stuff, I put real stuff here. And if I'm reading documentation, again, that goes back to the, like, I can press a button and like slide full screen attention into what I'm doing. So I find that a lot of the times people do these things that are like, you know, they don't realize their own body and actions are betraying these like secondary behaviors they're doing.
It's like with the layouts in Unity and a lot of these other ones, people don't seem to be using them correctly. Like if you're doing animation, have an animation layout where all the animation stuff comes up and then you haven't got a billion tabs open all over your screen. And then if you're doing previewing or whatever, you can jump to that layout and preview in there if you're doing the game and see, you get the point. But you don't have to have every tab of everything open at once. You can use Unity layouts to switch between them. I wish I would say one last one on that. Maybe I should write that.
Anyway. One last one, which again, people don't realize is there's so many windows and tabs in Unity that like when I want to do level design, I will open up 4 scene views, a top down, a left view, you know, one at the perspective angle, and then one that I'm working in. And it's like, and why? Because they used to do that as the default in UDK, and I really liked it. It made it really easy to work with. And I'm like, well, why don't I just do that in Unity when I want to? Because I can. And then people are like, oh, I didn't know you could have multiple scene view windows. It's like, well, yeah, if you need multiple scene view windows, make multiple scene view windows. You know?
And then save it as a layout, and then switch that layout super easy instead of literally dragging. That's the other thing I saw somebody doing recently, where they were literally going, right, I'm going to do this now. So they were dragging the screens around to change it, and they're like, all right, I'm done with that. And then they started dragging the screens back to the way that it was.
And I do the same in really like Premiere when I'm editing, right? Control W closes windows. I close all of the windows, and then Shift 1 to 5 brings up the windows I actually need. So, oh, I need to use the thing, Shift 1, do the thing, close it again. And I just keep a very minimal window set open.
Cool. Hey guys, I've got to get running and go pick up a kid from school right now. But I wanted to, before we wrap it up, just share Andrew's link for the game modules, which is now, it's half off right now?
Half off right now during the Fresh Assets sale. So
yeah, so if you haven't checked it out, there's the link is in the chat, and I'll put it in the description as well. Go check it out along with is there other Infinity PBR stuff on sale?
It's this one.
Just that one?
It's all new content for this sale. So everything on sale is relatively new on the store.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Yeah. So go check that out. Go grab that and see what else is in there. And then for the people who are asking, if you're interested in multiplayer stuff, there's a survey there. I just linked it. Just go fill it out. Let me know more specifically which multiplayer stuff you're interested in for the upcoming stuff I'm going to be working on. And somebody mentioned in chat, please don't kill the show. But we're not going to kill it. We're going to keep doing it. We'll do it live. We'll be back again next week, talk about stuff. And like I said earlier, before the show next week, and I have student-only Q&A calls where we're going to go over your projects and just your specific problems, not so much coursework related until we get into the multiplayer stuff, but diving into whatever issues you have for an hour before the show. And that'll be offline, so you can talk about things without sharing it publicly. If you're interested in that, the links are down below. You'll have access if you're one of the students already. You should see it in the membership section. All right. Thanks again, everybody. And thank you all three and four. Poor Greg had to leave for coming out. I got to get running before I get in trouble for being too late.
Bye, everyone.
All right. Thanks again, everybody. I find the goodbye button.